Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. I'm Chris Cleveland, and my pronouns are she and her. Reverend Cynthia Snavely will be joining us today via video, and we are always happy to enjoy Terry's lovely music and the technical skills of Betsy, Dustin, and Henry. We have some announcements as usual. Be sure to check out what you get in your email or look at the website because we have a lot going on here. And yesterday we were supposedly going to be giving away children's LGBTQ books at the Pride event. Our welcoming congregation had this project. And it got rained out. It got canceled by the city of Tiberias. So you can see our display of books out in the narthex. And if you know of any children that you think a book would be appropriate for, feel free to take that for them and read it with them. They're LGBTQ books. And we also have a donation box on that table that is to help the group that was putting on the Pride event yesterday because they spent a lot of money to bring people in and have the event, and then it was canceled. Hopefully they will be able to have it sometime. But if you would like to donate to Lake County Pride, they help, they support children and youth in Lake County by having community service projects and just groups that meet, do crafts together, and to help children in the LGBTQ community. The Welcoming Congregation is also hosting another movie event. We will be streaming the PBS documentary Mama Bears, and it's about evangelical mothers who have transgender children and how they are supporting and embracing their children and going against what their religion preaches. So it's going to be this Tuesday from 6 to 8 in the social hall, free event, and all are welcome. Also on Tuesday, if you would like to participate in the NAACP Juneteenth motorcade, it will be on Tuesday at 11. You meet at Leesburg's Walmart parking lot at the north end at 11 o'clock. If you have any questions, you can talk to Jane Hefting, who is waving her hands back there. Our finance committee wants to remind you that they are planning for our new fiscal year, which begins on July 1st, only a week and a half away. So if you have already pledged for 2024, thank you very much. However, some people haven't, and we would like you to do that as soon as possible so it will help us to have a budget and we know what we have to work with. There are cards out on the table to the left, and you can just put your pledge card right in the wooden box out there. And remember that it takes all of us to help support our church. You can also pledge by just calling or sending an email to Chris Higgins, our treasurer. And our communications committee, which is the heartbeat of UUCLC, so says their chairperson, Kristen. He couldn't be here today, and he would like to let you know that we need more volunteers for that communications committee. They need somebody to really help put things in the web page and organize the web page and print media and social media and all that kind of messaging. So they do a lot of good work, but we got to get the word out there. So if you are so inclined to be a communicator, let Kristen Hughes know. Are there any announcements from the floor? Okay, I covered it all. Oh, one more. Why don't you come up here, Janine? Oh, you got it.
Just reminding you of the ice cream social on July 4th. It will start at 2 o'clock, and we will have lots of good things to put on your ice cream. And then we'll have some games to play, and you can bring your games as well. We encourage you to sign up on the sign-up sheet out here on the table so we know not only how much ice cream to buy, but what kind you want. So please let us know, and we're going to have fun. Bring friends, bring relatives. Yeah, just tell us how many in your party.
Great. Okay. Social justice and fun. That's what we're all about. So welcome to our Pride Celebration service, and a special welcome to the fathers in the audience out there in the sanctuary, I guess. Happy Father's Day. UUCLC is a congregation that embraces diversity of religious experiences and spiritual practices. We welcome all, no matter your personal or religious background, no matter your age, your gender identity, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation. Here we venerate the inherent worth and dignity of every person and being. Here, we support each other in our searches for truth and meaning. All are welcome here. And we don't want to forget our Zoom friends. So Dustin, can you show us our Zoom friends so we can say hi? Well, there they are. Okay. Is there anyone here for the first time that is willing to introduce themselves? If you are, raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone that will be turned on.
Yes, it is. It's a random kind of thing.
Right up here in the front. Oh.
Hi, my name is Marilyn, and I've actually been wanting to come to this church for quite a while. But I'm a former Unity member, but 37 years ago. But there's no church in Mount Dora right now. So, but I think this is really fits what I believe in. So, and then I brought my friend Rita. My name is Rita Benoist, and this is my first time here, but I've been to Unity Church, and I'm active in Course in Miracles and so forth. And I live at Waterman Village. I've been there a year. So I look around here, and I really appreciate this church. It's beautiful, too. So glad to be here.
Yes. Beautiful in the building and the spirit inside everybody here, I think. Okay, and up in the front row.
Hi there, my name is Dr. Tia Julie Phillips. I'm from Groveland, Florida right now, but originally from Detroit. I grew up where I spent the past 10 years in Jupiter, Florida, where I went to the UU Church in West Palm Beach. I was there for several years supporting them. I was previously an airline captain with JetBlue, and now I'm full-time just helping people with their health. And brought my brother and my sister-in-law from up near Chicago. It was there a long time, UU people, huge advocates up there, and involved with the social work up there. I'll let them introduce themselves, but thank you for having us.
Welcome.
Hi, Jeff Phillips, Tia Jolie's brother, and Lois and I are up from Countryside Church, and if you know that church in Palatine, Illinois, if anyone has been there. Yeah, we've been there a long time. I'll let Lois talk about how long, because she's been there longer than I have. But glad to be here with another friendly face UU congregation. This is fantastic, and glad that we made an excuse for for Tia Jolie to finally come here and visit.
Okay, I wasn't planning to talk, but yeah. 30 years of UU and not any time leaving. Loved it. Beautiful place, beautiful spirit.
Welcome. Thank you for sharing your Sunday morning with us. We gratefully acknowledge that we are the stewards of this land that was sustainably protected by the Timucua Native peoples over 10,000 years ago. Let us think of them today as we learn and worship together. The lighting of a chalice is done by UU churches all over the world. So Betty is going to help us today as we light our chalice. We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may be a beacon of hope. In moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown, we light this flame and are emboldened by its blaze, knowing that that is our strength. Knowing that strength as prophetic and powerful people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call of love. Let's sing Spirit of Life. You can remain seated. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing. Our opening words this morning are by Reverend Otto O'Connor, who is a white, openly transgender man from Canada who lives in Malden, Massachusetts, and he has a wife and a 5-month-old baby. And he wrote this in honor of Pride Month. On a holy night in 1969, in an inn, also known as a bar, called the Stonewall Inn, a basement which had no running water, no safe fire exits, queer people of many colors and kinds danced together, for it was the only place where they were allowed to dance, at least permitted to by the mafia who ran the inn. In those days, it was common for the police to frequent the inn, not to join in the dance and the underground celebration, but to send the dancers home and make arrests. When they would arrive, the lights would go on, the people would be lined up, and then all those in drag, all those who were trans, all those without proper identification were arrested and taken into custody. But on this holy night, that early morning of June 28th, the people said, "Not tonight." As they called them to line up, the trans women refused to go, and the police began to beat and arrest them. And as the people spilled out from the bar onto the street, Christopher Street, a crowd grew to watch. And then, as trans women and lesbians and gay men were getting arrested, a yell came from the crowd, "Gay pride!" And as a trans woman was shoved, she shoved back. And the crowd began throwing bottles at the wagon. and suddenly it erupted. For once, the people didn't line up. For once, the people said, "No more, we've had enough." It was almost as if that night, being pulled out of the darkness of the underground of the Stonewall Inn one too many times, they said, "I'm ready to be seen." On this holy night, when the power of the oppressed rippled through the streets of New York, when queer people said no more, our world would never be the same. 50 years ago, it was illegal to be gay, to be trans, and to love and to celebrate. And now, only 50 some years later, here we are in a church celebrating gay and straight together, queer and straight together, trans and cis together, all in this together. And so, as we hear these stories of light and love and defiance and celebration, let us also remember and pay tribute to our movement ancestors, many of them trans women of color, who led the first rebellion that night. You see, Pride is a celebration of that anniversary, the anniversary of that riot at the Stonewall Inn in New York City, a holy night. Your gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, So, happy Pride, and welcome to this joyful celebration. Bring your whole selves, your gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer selves, your drag queen and butch and femme selves, cross-dressing, nail painting, tutu-wearing selves, your transgender, gender fluid, gender queer, agender, pansexual, allied selves, and all other identities that are and will be. Let us have a celebration because joy is a rebellion too. Let us begin with joy. And with that, we will do our joys and concerns. So it is our practice to offer our joys and concerns each Sunday with our stone ritual. If you wish to silently share, please make your way to the stone station at the front or in the back of the sanctuary and place a stone or stones in the sand as Terry provides our beautiful music. Does anyone wish to share a joy or concern aloud? Raise your hand. One of our tech crew wants to share, but he didn't do it.
All right, am I working? Yep, sure am. All right, I got to taste my own medicine for once. That's weird. All right, you want the good news or bad news, sir?
Good.
Cool, you're getting the good news anyway. So, good news is, I finally moved out of my old place. I'm in my own new place. It's weird being by myself at my old place. Got its ups and downs. Bad news is, a lot of stuff did not survive the move.
Oh.
My shopping list just doubled. All right, open table. Who wants to take this mic away from me, please? Yes.
I have a friend who has furniture. I'll talk to you later.
Heard.
Anybody else?
If there's anyone who was not mentioned that you hold concern for, you may name them aloud at this time. For all those named, and for those that are too tender to speak, we collectively hold them in the light of our compassion and the warmth of our community. Our movement meditation today will be Tai Chi. It has been said that in movement there is stillness. While we are moving gently together, whether sitting in your seat, standing, or just watching others, or sitting with your eyes closed and listening, let us not concern ourselves with the technical aspects of the movements. Rather, let us seek out the stillness within the movements. This will last about 5 minutes. So you can go where you want to go to do Tai Chi. Breathing deeply. Let us reaffirm who we are by stating our congregational covenant together. Love the spirit of this church, and through service, live our principles. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Reverend Cynthia has provided us with an interlude called "The Stonewall We Know is a Myth, and That is Okay," and it will be followed by her Father's Day story and a prayer.
Who threw the first brick at Stonewall?
Some say it was Stormy DeLavier.
Marsha P. Johnson.
Sylvia Rivera.
It's a question that calls attention to overlooked LGBT elders, but also...
Jason Mraz threw the first brick at Stonewall.
Judy Garland threw the first brick.
Scarlett Johansson.
It's become an inside joke about queer icons and straight allyship.
50 years after the police raided the Stonewall Inn and its patrons mounted a resistance on the street outside, I still didn't know the answer to this question. Who threw the first brick at Stonewall? What I did know is that I had heard this story over and over again.
The gay rights movement was born in 1969 at a beloved gay bar called the Stonewall Inn. The Stonewall riot began when a drag queen, bereft by the death of Judy Garland, threw a brick at a police officer. The riot culminated in a Rockette-style kick line of drag queens facing down tactical police in riot gear. It's a beautiful story, but it's not exactly true. So, I gathered some people who were at Stonewall in 1969, some historians who had spent years studying LGBT history, and some contemporary queer writers to ask them, what's wrong with this account of Stonewall? They helped me break it down bit by bit.
It didn't begin at Stonewall.
Before Stonewall, we had the Daughters of Bilitis, we had the Mattachine Society.
There was the Sip-In at Julius's.
And the movement in the world dates back to 1897 in Berlin with the founding of Magnus Hirschfeld's organization, which was the first gay rights group.
So if gay rights didn't begin at Stonewall, why was Stonewall important?
Because it led to the creation of the gay liberation movement.
Gay Liberation Front was born out of the ashes of Stonewall. Gay Liberation Front is literally why we have everything we have today.
They planned a march on the first anniversary of Stonewall.
And people forget that there were 3 pride parades. I was at the one in Los Angeles in 1970. We had a big jar of Vaseline on a float. It was a really in-your-face float.
Oh, wow.
Now here's a fundamental question about Stonewall. Was it a riot?
And what we did is we were cheering and dancing in the street. That's not a riot.
It was just a loud and bawdy, fun group of guys until it turned into a riot.
It is called a riot, an uprising, a rebellion.
I like the word rebellion, not overthrow the government rebellion, rebellion from within.
Next, was the Stonewall Bar as idyllic as some media portrays it to have been?
The Stonewall Inn was a safe haven for the queer community.
But it was a dump.
It was a hellhole.
Dirty, rundown, mafia run.
A mafia sleazy bar, and they watered down drinks.
Watered down drinks.
There was a much better bar called the Cherry Lane.
The 10th of always.
Cookies.
So the Stonewall Inn was neither New York's only gay bar, nor an especially beloved institution. Now, let's talk about that drag queen who started it all.
They said that she threw the first shot glass at Stonewall, and it was the shot glass heard around the world.
One of the persistent myths about Stonewall is that Marsha threw the first cocktail glass. Marsha herself said in an interview that I did with Marsha, I didn't get there until 2.
I was uptown. I didn't get downtown till about 2 o'clock, because when I got downtown, the place was already on fire and it was a raid already.
Marsha P. Johnson's friend and fellow activist Sylvia Rivera is also sometimes credited with starting Stonewall.
Sylvia Rivera is known for throwing the first bottle at the Stonewall riots.
Sylvia Rivera herself said in 2001,
I have been given the credit for throwing the first Molotov cocktail, but I always like to correct it. I threw the second one. I did not throw the first one.
First of all, that comment was probably tongue-in-cheek. Second of all, it's not certain that Molotov cocktails were thrown at all. Regardless of what Rivera and Johnson did at Stonewall, their impact on the trans and gay movements can't be overstated.
When I see people saying Marcia and Sylvia were the ones who threw the first bricks, I want to remember them in a way that feels honest, because their legacies extend far beyond that night.
However, there was a gender nonconforming person that several witnesses credit with catalyzing Stonewall.
She was very butch and she was tough, and the police were being rough with her, and she was really fighting back.
We have 4 independent accounts who said that this woman's fight with the police is what tipped the scales and set it all off.
She called out to the crowd, "What are you doing? Why are you just standing there? Why don't you do something?"
Some people say that woman was Stormy DeLarvier, a lesbian who worked as a bouncer at the time. DeLarvier sometimes took credit and sometimes denied her role, but so far there's been no conclusive proof of who exactly that butch woman at Stonewall was. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
Judy Garland.
Judy Garland's funeral took place at Campbell's Funeral Home on the afternoon before the events at Stonewall.
The patrons of the Stonewall used their grief over Judy's death to rise up and fight back.
But were the two events related?
The worst question that people ask about Stonewall is whether it was caused by the death of Judy Garland.
If one looks at the accounts published in 1969, there's only one account that mentioned Stonewall and Judy Garland, and that was written by a right-wing columnist to mock the movement.
You're trivializing our anger and oppression of 2,000 years to a singer.
So I went to Judy Garland's funeral, and a lot of Stonewall Queens did.
Oh, it was like Noah's Ark. All of Judy's fans. God bless Judy Garland. But no, she was not the cause of the Stonewall riot. No.
So now, let's talk about that brick. One of the most derided representations of the first brick came from the 2015 movie Stonewall.
Gay power!
All anyone wants to talk about is who threw the first brick.
Who threw the first brick?
People claiming I threw the first brick.
First off, it asks were bricks thrown.
Where were those bricks found?
Apparently there was a construction site that had a pile of bricks.
I heard that last week.
Did they show you a picture of that construction site?
It's possible they were pulling rocks from the street. I haven't determined where that would have been unless it was in the park. If there's a tree pit, they're usually lined with something.
Around this tree, there were these stones. I pulled up the stones. I know I threw stones. I don't know if I threw a brick. I doubt it. I think I was a stones man.
So objects were thrown that may or may not have been bricks. But amidst all this chaos in the streets, did they really form a kick line while facing down police in riot gear?
No, there was not a kick line at Stonewall. There were many kick lines at Stonewall.
And I'll be glad to give you the lyrics. We are the Stonewall girls.
We wear our hair in curls.
We don't wear underwear.
To show our pubic hair.
It was done to the tune of the Howdy Doody theme.
It's howdy doody time. You're right, it is.
All right, so we've worked out a framework for what happened at Stonewall that many people can maybe mostly agree on. But why does this even matter? Why are we nitpicking this to death? Because when we talk about what happened at Stonewall 50 years ago, we're also talking about issues the LGBT community is still wrestling with today, namely transphobia and racism.
There's one graphic I'm thinking about in particular. Trans women of color throwing bricks at cops gave me the right to get married. I think a lot of people cling on to these narratives because trans women of color are often already sidelined.
I mean, there were some individual people of color, but it was not a group of trans people of color who started the rioting. If people start telling stories not as they were, but as they would like them to be, that procedure can be used by anybody for any purpose. So I think that we need to be consistent in the truth.
If we are demanding that our history be respected, then we have to respect it ourselves. You have to apply the same criteria to our history, that it be worthwhile, that it be accurate, that it be well researched. We should recognize our warts as well as our flowers, as it were.
I mean, I think historical erasure is real. How do we tell a history of something when our lives aren't in archives? Speculative fiction and historically informed fiction, to me, are ways to answer that question. And it doesn't have to be true to be meaningful.
Stonewall was a messy evening. LGBT histories are very messy. I think naming that doesn't take away from the importance of what happened.
I don't think anyone threw the first brick at Stonewall.
And at this point, I don't care who threw the first brick.
Oh, I don't think it matters.
And it doesn't matter.
Like, it doesn't matter. It's okay that we don't know.
If it wasn't a brick, it was a rock. If it wasn't a rock, it was a purse. If it wasn't a purse, it was a shoe. If it wasn't a shoe, it was a glass. If it wasn't a glass, it was a dirty look. It was all of those things. It wasn't just that day, it was days before, and it was many years after.
It's 50 years later, and we still can't agree on exactly what happened that night. But that's all right. Stonewall was about people reclaiming their own narratives from those that told them they were sick or pitiful or didn't even exist. Part of telling your own story means living openly and partying at parades, but it also means contending with other people's versions of that story, even if theirs doesn't match perfectly with yours. As Chrysanthemum Tran said, that can be messy, and that's okay. I love a messy party.
I'd like to share a story for this Father's Day from Reverend Joanna Fontaine Crawford that was shared in one of the weekly Braver Wiser emails. She wrote, "There was a single mother in our congregation who had 2 young children, a daughter and a son. Seeing the painted fingernails of his mom and sister, the little boy wanted to get in on the fun. Oh, how he loved painted fingernails. He waved his hands around, giggling with happiness. He loved experimenting with different colors. His delight was cut short when he began being bullied at school. His mother shared what was happening with friends at church. Somehow, word got out to the men in the church. The following Sunday, men of all ages showed up at our church with painted fingernails. Teenagers, business types, old men, some even bought bottles of polish so that the men who hadn't heard the news could paint their fingernails too. The little boy's face when he saw that, his mouth was an O of wonder. His eyes lit up with joy. Reverend Fontaine says, mine were too. It was the most loving thing I'd ever seen. I have no idea what I preached on that day. It didn't matter because the most powerful sermon was happening that day out in the fellowship hall with Sally Hansen mauve over polish. That night, the boy asked his mother about all those boys with the painted nails. They're Unitarian Universalists, she told him. Are we Unitarian Universalists, he asked. Well, I am, said his mother. He thought about it for several minutes. I'm one too, he decided. A Prayer for this Father's Day by Kirk Lodeman Copeland. Let us praise those fathers who have striven to balance the demands of work, marriage, and children with an honest awareness of both joy and sacrifice. Let us praise those fathers who, lacking a good model for a father, have worked to become a good father themselves. Let us praise those fathers who, by their own account, were not always there for their children, but who continue to offer those children now grown their love and their support. Let us pray for those fathers who have been wounded by the neglect and hostility of their children. Let us praise those fathers who, despite divorce, have remained in their children's lives. Let us praise those fathers whose children are adopted and who have created family together. Let us praise those fathers who, as stepfathers, freely choose the obligation of fatherhood and earn their stepchildren's love and respect. Let us praise those fathers who have lost a child to death and continue to hold that child in their heart. Let us praise those men who have no children, but who cherish the next generation as if they were their own. Let us praise those men who have fathered us in their roles as mentors and guides. Let us praise those men who are about to become fathers. May they openly delight in their children. And let us praise those fathers who have died, but who live on in our memory and whose love continues to nurture us. Amen.
It is our practice at UUCLC to give generously to our church as we are able, keeping in mind both its meaning in our lives and its impact on the world. Excuse me. We appreciate donations of time, talent, and treasure. If you wish to donate some of your treasure, just a minute. Okay, sorry. If you wish to donate some of your treasure or make a pledge for 2014, you may place it in the wooden box outside of the sanctuary door or use any of the methods shown on the screen. Our first hymn today is hymn 114 in the gray hymnal, Forward Through the Ages. You may recognize the tune, but these are UU lyrics. Please rise if willing and able to sing all three verses.
I don't really have a sermon today. I am straight, I'm cisgender. I thought it better to share some words today from those who identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community. Our opening words were words from Otto O'Connor, who identifies as a transgender man. I quote him again as I begin this non-sermon sermon. He wrote this in June of 2020 for the weekly Braver, Wiser email. He begins with a quote. "No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." Marsha P. Johnson. Happy Pride. It feels strange to say that this moment is anything but happy because of an assault in this country on Black and brown bodies that has never really ended. The movement for Black lives and what's become known as Pride aren't the same movement, but they certainly aren't separate movements. There have always been Black queer people, no matter how much the white LGBTQ+ movement has pushed them to the fringes and tried to claim it for themselves. He writes, "I claimed Otto as my name as an adult, a symbol of my identity as a transgender person. I claimed this name to help me think about who I was and how I was going to be in the world. But Otto wouldn't be my name unless a Black trans woman named Marsha P. Johnson and a Latina named Sylvia Rivera responded to police-induced violence at the Stonewall Inn in 1969. Two women of color who claimed those names for themselves. It wouldn't be my name if it weren't for Rita Hester, a Black trans woman who was murdered in 1998, and the vigil of her death that led to the annual reading of the names of the dead, our beloved transgender siblings killed by anti-transgender violence, the overwhelming majority of whom are transgender women of color, who often aren't called by their right name in their obituaries and funerals. These aren't just names on a list, they're whole lives with hopes and dreams, just as our own. We have to say their names. I wouldn't be able to live as I do without these ancestors who lived their queer lives unapologetically. My liberation is tied up in the liberation of Black and brown lives. These are my siblings being killed. Now is not the time to stay silent. And so I claim responsibility as a white person to speak up, to decenter myself, to accept the ways in which I've gone along with the insidious anti-Blackness in this country. I invite you to name for yourself what your commitments will be, because we need to name them again and again. These might be different depending on where you are in this struggle. For Black and brown folks, this might simply be surviving right now. Name them and don't let them go. O'Connor ends with this prayer. Remind us that our struggles for liberation are connected. From our ancestors to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Tony McDade, to protesters, especially the Black and brown protesters lifting their voices. May we all remember how inextricably we are linked in this fight for justice and freedom. May it be so. How inextricably linked we are in this fight for justice and freedom. We live in a world where any little boy, straight, gay, trans, may still be bullied for painting his nails. We live in a world where people want to and are taking books with gay and trans characters off school and library bookshelves. We live in a world where states are outlawing medical care for trans children. We live in a world where too many white folks still think it's their right to shoot Black folks. We live in a world where governments are outlawing medical care for pregnant people. We live in a world where people think it's okay to call the vice president of the nation a whore on their bumper stickers and yard signs. We live in a world where graffitied swastikas still show up on walls of synagogues. These are not unrelated acts. They are all acts that deny the inherent worth and dignity of another. They are all acts that deny justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, that deny the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. They are all acts that should cause us to rise up, to resist. We remember our Stonewall ancestors and so many others who said, enough. May they inspire us to join their ranks. Unitarian Universalist minister Lois Van Leer, who identifies as lesbian, wrote, "They will march, walk, wheel, dance, shimmy, and shake, block upon block of undulating color, flesh, banners, signs, clothing, or lack thereof, hands raised, hands linked, apart, together, singing, shouting, chanting, silent, joyous, tearful, nervous, afraid, proud, defiant, angry, happy, delirious, tentative, ecstatic, courageous, brave, free. The stereotype, the unrecognizable, the flamboyant, the ordinary, the parent, the child, the runaway, the lost, the lonely, the found, gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, queer, intersect, questioning allies, those who taunt and jeer, their banners of hate 10 feet tall, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, burn in hell. The other slogans, straight but not narrow, I love my gay child, side with love. One day a year, 1 out of 365, Mardi Gras out of season, festive, bacchanalian, tame, booths, food, shopping. Underneath, there is a history, resistance. It was the marginalized of the marginalized, drag queens, transvestites, the butch and the femme, who unlike Rosa Parks did not sit down, but in their tired rage stood up, rose up, fought back, holding the police captive in the bars they had come to raid. Their weapons, their oppression, their hands, beer bottles, Stonewall. 6 days of riots in New York, June 1969. A year later, a march in Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, LA, San Fran, and now any weekend in June, anywhere around the world, Pride. Why do we march? For those who are not able, for those who have been murdered, for those who are ravaged by disease, for those who are still beaten, still taunted, still harassed, still victims, still targets. Why do we march? Because some truths aren't self-evident, because all aren't protected equal. And we love a good party. They will march, walk, wheel, dance, shimmy, and shake, block upon block of undulating color, flesh, banners, signs, clothing, or lack thereof, hands raised, hands linked, apart, together, singing, shouting, chanting, silent, joyful, tearful, nervous, afraid, proud, defiant, angry, happy, delirious, tentative, ecstatic, courageous, brave, free. May we work together to make that vision of freedom real.
We will now rise and sing our next hymn, We Are a Gentle, Angry People. And rather than using the book, we are changing some of the words in the orders. So follow the screens, please. And feel free if your neighbors agree to hold hands, whatever feels right for you as we sing. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Gentle loving. We are gentle loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gentle loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. Remain standing, please, for our closing words and our chalice extinguishing. During the Pride Month, we affirm with joy that we are proud. We are proud to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, and questioning. We are proud to have survived and thrived despite the challenges to our dignity, well-being, and sometimes even our lives. We are proud to be heterosexual and cisgender allies. We are proud to live and work in solidarity with our LGBT friends and family. Together, we build the beloved community. We and those we love have been judged, mistreated, assaulted, but we are here and we are proud. We and those we love have been stereotyped and have faced discrimination, but we are here and we are proud. We have seen those we love beaten to death and gunned down, but we are here and we are proud. We are together and we are proud. And together we build the beloved community. Watch as it grows among us even now. Let us say our chalice extinguishing words together, followed by the singing of We. And you can, again, hold hands if your neighbors are comfortable, or just send your energy to them. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And weave. together.